Hey, can I show you something? This is Canada's national team in the Math Olympics. That's a thing. Smart kids. Thomas Guo from Markham, Michael Lee from Toronto, Eric Shen from Toronto, Zixiang Zhou from London, Ontario, David Tang from Toronto, and Edgar Wang from Westmount, Quebec. Here's a team that was specifically for girls to encourage young women to go into math. This is their team. It's more diverse. Anna Krokine, and then Elaine Liu, Jennifer Wang, and Emily Zhou. Now, I've checked other years for this same team. The demographics are about the same. Can I say it? It's mainly Chinese kids. I mean, that's just a fact. Why? I have some theories, none of which are racist. A lot of these kids come from immigrant families who take a very keen interest in their kids' education, who came to Canada for opportunity, and they're not going to let their kids just slough it off. No gender studies or vegetarian studies for their kids. No just playing video games and smoking pot all day. Study, 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 make the family proud. It's that immigrant mentality. I think that's part of it. I think another part that's related is if you immigrate to Canada, maybe your English isn't so strong. It's not your first language. So perhaps math is something that you can excel at no matter what your native tongue is. And a related answer, and I think this is important, is math is not subjective. You either know the answer to a math question or you don't. There's no wiggle room. There's no favoritism. It's a pure meritocracy. Other things in life aren't. It's about who you know, not what you know. Does anyone believe that Justin Trudeau would be our prime minister now if he didn't have the luck of being Pierre Trudeau's son? Math doesn't work that way. You know it or you don't. So those are three theories as to why Canada's math teams are overwhelmingly Asian. Frankly, I'll tell you that out of ethnic pride, I had hoped to see a Jew on one of those teams, but I guess it wasn't to be. This does cause some policy issues in places that care about race-based outcomes. One of the most racist places in the world these days are universities. So whether this is nurture or nature, it's happening. Asian kids are great at math and science. So if you're a school that insists on checking people's race and having racial proportions in the name of affirmative action or whatever you're doing, whatever you're calling it now, you're going to have to discriminate against Asians. It happens like crazy in elite schools. California is the worst. They explicitly penalize Asian kids. They make them have to have much higher test scores to get into school. You know, they used to do that to Jews too, even here in Canada. About 70 years ago or so, they limited the number of Jewish kids who were admitted to, for example, McGill for the law school and the med school. Now they're doing that to Asians. My point is, math isn't just not racist. Math is anti-racist. Math is where you can go for a refuge from racism. Because math doesn't care if you're black or white or Asian or Jewish or Gentile or whatever. It is a meritocracy. So imagine saying that math is racist. Well, if that idea is new to you, you haven't been paying attention. Focusing on the correct answer in maths is racist. That's from the Times of London. That's the theory. It's not just some crackpot pundit who's saying that. It's part of a massive program bankrolled in part by Bill Gates, of course, to racialize math instruction. Here's how the Times Union describes it. They say, objectivity is particularly toxic, and practices that perpetuate and reinforce objectivity must be dismantled. Focusing on the right answer can lead to underdeveloped reasoning skills and a failure to grasp the complexities of math. Consistent with this, perfectionism is to be dismantled, as it also places too much value on getting it right. The notion that new learning comes from the teacher is a paternalistic, power-hoarding method to perpetuate white supremacy. That's a pretty good summary of it. They're criticizing it, but that's a great way to sum up this new math business. Now, let's stop for a moment to remind you why math is important. Not for everyone, I acknowledge. I mean, if most people don't know math, the worst that's going to happen is, I don't know, they don't know how to live within a budget or how to do their taxes, or they don't know how to count their change, or they get bamboozled by some payment plan, or don't understand their credit card interest, for example. But if you're trying to be excellent in math, like those math Olympians who are not even that great, but just really good, so maybe you can get a certain job in engineering or architecture or something. If you get it wrong, you could have a high-rise fall down or a bridge fall down. In fact, that's the story behind the iron ring that engineers wear. It's allegedly made from the steel of a bridge that fell down because of bad math. It's like an airline pilot or a brain surgeon. You want the best person, no matter if they're male or female or whatever their race. Please don't mess around with those things, okay? Which brings me to the atrocious government of Ontario. We already know they don't care about schools. I think they're the last jurisdiction in North America to still ban children from going to schools in person, using the pandemic as the excuse. Seriously, they're on Zoom calls all day. No schools, no kids' sports. And it's not even certain that'll end this September. Kids who have the lowest mortality rate for this virus are being punished by the lockdown itself in Ontario. And the biggest children's hospital in Ontario says it's causing an epidemic of depression and suicide, but the Ontario Conservative government doesn't give a damn. So really what I'm talking about should not come as a surprise to you. They don't really care about school to begin with. But here is the Ontario math curriculum for grade 9. You know you're in trouble when the word algebra appears just once, but the phrase human rights appears 5 times. I counted. Human rights, equity, and inclusive education in mathematics. Research indicates that there are groups of students, for example, Indigenous students, Black students, students experiencing homelessness, students living in poverty, students with LGBTQ plus identities, students with special education needs and disabilities who continue to experience systematic barriers to accessing high-level instruction in and support with learning mathematics. Let me just stop for a moment. Are they saying that gay people are bad at math? Where did that come from? And why are we even talking about this? Why are we defining entire racial and demographic groups as victims and saying they can't learn? What are we doing? This is math, people. Students bring abundant cultural knowledges, experiences, and competencies into mathematical learning. Okay, what's that got to do with algebra? Or the Pythagorean theorem, or long division, or fractions? In mathematics classrooms, teachers also provide opportunities for cross-curricular learning and for teaching about human rights to create anti-racist, anti-discriminatory learning environments. All educators must be committed to equity and inclusion and to upholding and promoting the human rights of every learner. Hey guys, sorry to interrupt. I think I might have found our problem here. I think I might have found out why all these victim groups are doing so poorly in math. I think it's because we're not teaching them math. Challenging Eurocentric ideas about learning mathematics is key to a CRRP approach, that's cross-cultural or something, in an anti-racist and anti-discriminatory environment. Teachers know that there is more than one way to develop a solution, and students are exposed to multiple ways of knowing and encouraged to explore multiple ways of finding answers. I'm going to send all those Chinese kids a stern letter for them to stop using Eurocentric ideas about math. Put aside all the BS language for a moment. This is where it gets real. Look at this. An equitable mathematics curriculum recognizes that mathematics can be subjective. Mathematics is often positioned as an objective and pure discipline. However, the content and the context in which it is taught, the mathematicians who are celebrated, and the importance that is placed upon mathematics by society are subjective. Mathematics has been used to normalize racism and marginalization of non-Eurocentric mathematical knowledges. And a decolonial, anti-racist approach to mathematics education makes visible its historical roots and social constructions. The Ontario Grade 9 mathematics curriculum emphasizes the need to recognize and challenge systems of power and privilege, both inside and outside the classroom, in order to eliminate systemic barriers and to serve students belonging to groups that have been historically disadvantaged and underserved in mathematics education. But they said math is subjective. That is not correct. 2 plus 2 is not 5. There's no wiggle room. I don't know why they're doing this. One answer, for real, is anti-Asian racism. Stop the kids who keep getting the right answers from winning all the time. I really think there's a lot of anti-Asian racism involved. Another reason is it's easier for the teachers. It's easier to teach this political BS than to teach calculus. That's tough. It's easier to mark and give out grades. You just hand out marks based on feelings, not on achievement. Hey, can you do me a favor? If any graduate from this curriculum wants to design a bridge or a high-rise, can you stop them? That's an excerpt from my daily show, the Ezra Levant Show. Every day I do a monologue on the news of the day, then I interview an interesting guest, and then I read my hate mail. You gotta subscribe. Go to rebelnews.com.